Raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special and highly anticipated episode of the Raising Cain Show. Tonight, we have the extraordinary guest who has lived through some of the most controversial moments in American history. Please join me in welcoming Judyth Vary Baker. Judyth Vary Baker is not just an author, but a woman with a deeply intertwined past with one of the most infamous figures in history, Lee Harvey Oswald, the alleged assassin of President John F. Kennedy. Her personal relationship with Oswald and her unique perspective on the events surrounding the JFK assassination have made her a central figure in one of America's most enduring mysteries. Judith has courageously shared her story through several riveting books, including Me and Lee, How I Came to Know, Love, and Lose Lee Harvey Oswald, David Ferrie, Mafia Pilot, and Kennedy and Oswald, The Big Picture. These works delve into her experiences and the broader conspiracy theories that continue to spark intense debate. Tonight, Judith will be sharing her insights on the recent assassination attempt on President Trump, drawing shocking parallels between this event and the turbulent times she lived through with Oswald. Her perspective promises to be both intriguing and controversial, offering a rare glimpse into the hidden truths of our nation's history and current events. This is a conversation you won't want to miss. So without further ado, let's welcome Judyth Vary Baker to the Raising Cain Show. Judith, thank you for joining us.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Judith, if you wouldn't mind, I want to just ask you if you could just turn down your volume just a tad, and then getting a little bit of feedback.
Not sure. I will do my best. It'll take just a moment here.
No problem.
Let's see if I can reach it. My volume's, there we go. Yeah. Is that better?
It's probably enough. Yep.
Thank you.
So Judith, thank you so much for coming on. And I was very excited to hear that that we were able to get you on the show tonight. And there's so much that has transpired, through the attempted assassination of Trump. And I'm very, I guess, I often kind of approach things very skeptically at first. But I saw a video a couple of days ago that completely changed my perspective on, some of the things that people have been saying about whether or not, it was the official narrative, of course, is that one, that there was a lone gunman, on the roof, this guy Crooks, 20 years old, who somehow pulled off, getting behind the lines of, the secret, service and the police and everything else in order to pop off some shots at President Trump. And of course, we know by a lot that's been published that we were very, very close to losing Donald Trump. If he had not turned his head at just the right moment, at a split second, there's no way that, he would have survived. He would have taken a direct shot, through his head, and it would have killed him likely. So there's been all kinds of conspiracy theories and things like that that people have talked about on both sides of the aisle, including some that have tried to make the claim that Trump orchestrated this so that he could boost his numbers, which is just absolutely ridiculous. We're talking about people died, people were injured, and Trump himself. There's no way that you could time moving your head. You're talking about bullets that are supersonic that move faster than the speed of sound. So, but there is some things that have indicated to me that what we're hearing from the Secret Service and the FBI is not likely the whole truth. And as we talked, well, as we talked prior to the show, I myself have my own experiences with the FBI that give me pause in believing anything that they say, let alone any of these federal agencies. And so we'll get into that in a little bit tonight. But I guess what I want to do is start off, tell us from your words. And we got about an hour to get into all of this. So, but I want to start with, telling us in your words a little bit more of your background and the condensed version of how you met Lee Harvey Oswald and how you ended up with him, and then what was your thoughts at the moment that you were hearing his name, being brought up as the shooter?
It's always difficult, and people don't realize maybe that no matter how many times I speak of these things, that I saw him shot before my eyes, that he was the love of my life, and that it's never, I have a memory that's based on pictures. I see in my book, I want to show you my newest book, Lee Harvey Oswald and Me, which is the update of me and Lee. And by the way, I have the forward and afterward are by attorneys. I'm tired of researchers with their theories. Attorneys go and trial attorneys find out the facts, and then you get endorsed. So what really, I suppose, affected me most through everything is that, for example, Lee Oswald trusted the FBI, trusted certain elements of the CIA. He was working with both of them. And then there are those who betrayed. And it's like all the CIA isn't evil, all the FBI isn't evil now. But unfortunately, those who are at the top, I would beg to differ. All right. Now, how all this started, I was during Sputnik, the CIA hunted out high IQ kids, all of the whiz kids, we were called. My IQ 160, and it was like that, And so I actually had a CIA operative actually visit me. He was a bioengineer, a geneticist, and was into radiobiology. And after interviewing me, he kind of took a shine to me, and only 15. And before I knew it, I had my own lab. I later would have connection with Walter Reed, WRAIR, with Oak Ridge, and with even Rockefeller Institute sent me mice. Later, I would have mice from Dr. James Renier. These were germ-free mice. I mean, Roswell Park Institute, where I was then super trained and all this. There's a lot of background on me. I had invented a modified way when I was 16 to improve the way to get magnesium out of seawater, and that was interesting also. So I went to International Science Fair, and that's where I was able to present my work on cancer research. My grandmother had died of cancer. My grandfather was dying of cancer, and you can imagine my concerns when my family was being affected by this. I wanted to cure cancer, and I had access. I had my own lab and everything. Had a lot of help, but I did manage to give lung cancer to mice, germ-free mice in their germ-free chambers with cigarette products in only 7 days. Nobody had ever done that.
Wow.
And and it took 4 years to duplicate they did duplicate it at Roswell Park. Dr. James T. Grace did, but it took him 4 years. And I have the documents, everything. I'm one of these document people. I keep everything. Now, with rapid training I had, also Eli Lilly was involved at that time. the problem is that I became very anti-Castro. At Manatee High School, I dated Antonio Lopez Fresquet. He was the son of Castro's finance minister, Rufo Lopez Fresquet, who was secretly a CIA. And he was really worried to get his father to get out safely. All right. So that kind of thing was going on. Just after Tony left the small university, his pre-university where he was in Cuba, right after he left, Operation Peter Pan started at that same Ruston University. And so the jig was up. I mean, his mother had to leave, who was American. Her name was Helen. And anyway, so I learned a lot about Castro, how he tortured people and all the kinds of evil. So I was really primed. And on top of that, then I'm learning you'll see newspaper articles about me because of what I was doing, you know. I crashed an important seminar and met 3 important doctors. Dr. George Moore, head of Roswell Institute, where I later get fast-track training. And then there was Dr. Harold Deal. He was the vice president of the American Cancer Society in charge of all everything to do with research, cancer research, and I had available to me all kinds of funding, and you can imagine. And then finally, Dr. Alton Oxner. All 3 of these men would go around and they were preaching, all right, at trials, trying to get people to understand that smoking could cause lung cancer. And here I caused lung cancer in mice in only 7 days. So they had very special interest in me. So I'm getting all this special training, and it became more and more clandestine. It was like for my protection, you know, and I didn't understand at the time. They were running my life, and I didn't realize how much until I was asked to come to New Orleans and work with the famous Dr. Mary Sherman. Now, we had the book, Dr. Mary's Monkey, where you'll see about the SB40 monkey virus that I had learned to work with safely. And to make a long story short, I am now in New Orleans, and I am embroiled, not realizing this would happen, in a project to kill Fidel Castro. Of course, being told and brainwashed, really, that it was, will stop World War III, and, you'll be a hero. I saved many documents, some of them secretly, because I thought, we're going to be heroes. We're going to save the world. Yeah, I'm only 19 years old. So
is this when you were down in Louisiana? Is that where you ended up meeting up?
New Orleans. And Lee Oswald had returned to the United States. By the way, he went with great fanfare, and it was all the newspapers. He's going to shoot any American he sees in uniform. He comes back, and nobody notices. The U.S. government decided to keep using him. He was very good overseas. There's a long story about how he had to come back to the United States and why. But he told me everything eventually. This man had to United States, of course, that he was communist. By doing so, he was scooping up and helping to scoop up with the FBI, Guy Bannister and others, and with Robert F. Kennedy, also involved, to try and get Castro spies. Castro was sending his spies to New Orleans because at Pontchartrain Beach, they were actually teaching and working with guerrillas and insurgents and training them, sending them off to Guatemala, and from there they could attack Cuba. So, Castro's not stupid. He knew things were going on in New Orleans. Lee Oswald became my personal protector. And we both had horrible, lousy. The day after I was married, my sweet husband abandoned me for weeks at a time. I didn't even know where he was at first. And I had difficulties, problems. They're in my book. And Lee came to the rescue. And it turned out so he wouldn't be deported because he was supposed to stay in the USSR. Things changed with the Eisenhower administration going over to the Kennedy. The CIA did not tell Kennedy everything. And a lot of operatives were actually not revealed to Kennedy. There was a lot the CIA didn't tell him. And unfortunately, he was one of those that got cut off. So he asked to get back to the United States because he was of no use. Contacts were cut off and things like that. So he comes back. Now, with no fanfare, he's walking the streets, a free man. I knew immediately that was impossible. I'd already worked with enough people, that were involved in secrecy, and I learned a lot, I say, from Dr. Knut Mickelson, who contacted me long ago and involved me, to start with all this. So here's Lee, unhappy in a forced marriage. Not really, he loved her, but she was like he had to marry somebody or get deported. See, now he's not going to leave her behind when he has to go back to the United States. Nobody. That he told me that made him so happy. He had to pretend he was disappointed. Where's my flock of people to tell the story? Why am I not getting arrested? Well, actually, of course, they wanted to keep everything quiet so they could keep using him, and that's exactly what they did. Now he's pro-Catholic and communist, and he's actually protecting us.
So I want to bring up a document here because of course, I grew up when I first heard the story of, I heard the official story, right, that Lee Harvey Oswald was a communist, that, that he was, pro-Russian and all of this. And interestingly enough, of course, we've had these documents that have been around for a very long time. But, for whatever reason, the federal government decided, we need to keep these classified forever. And it wasn't until I think 2017 there was a disclosure, that was made of several documents, several thousand documents, but they were highly redacted. Several of them were highly redacted. And then in 2023, under this administration, they released even more documents. And this document here, there's a lot of documents to go through, but this was the last document that is in the National Archives. So this is the very last one that they decided to release. And they released it unredacted. And I want to read this because I think this is very interesting. I'm going to start basically where it's talking about this guy, James Wilcott. And it said, James Wilcott, this is an interview. These are this is the FBI's notes when they were investigating. It says, James Wilcott gave testimony in a closed hearing before the SCA that a CIA case officer situated or stationed in Tokyo, Japan. It's kind of hard to read this because it's cursive writing here, but it says told him that LHO, meaning Lee Harvey Oswald, was a CIA agent, and also mentioned Lee Harvey Oswald's crypto. I don't know what that says right there. And mentioned, let's see here. What does it say? It says, and mentioned that something took place in Tokyo Station shortly after the word of the JFK assassination was received on 23 November.
I am aware of the document and the shall we say, the chatter that went on there at Tokyo Station, as to say, what? You mean Oswald? Right. So I'm curious. You probably know this document far better than me. Can you give your account of what are they trying to say in this document? Obviously, this document they did not want released to the public, but this was finally released. Well, everybody knew that Lee Oswald was CIA, and they were surprised that he would be thrown under the bus. And you imagine now, CIA employees, it could have happened to anybody, think of it like that. And by the way, this is handwritten. Understand, most of the time when you see handwritten documents like that, it is a rewrite of the original. Okay, and then they want that to be typed up as an original. Most of these, I've seen these rewrites all the time. So it's what we call sanitized. And in other words, the information is probably even worse than what you're seeing there. So these people, he had been paid. Lee did his first job over in Japan. They made handmade suits for him that were fancy, sent him off to talk to Japanese girls who had connections with the USSR. And he was learning Russian, and he stopped drinking and smoking. And when he realized that he might be able to be useful to the CIA. He learned how to seduce women, and believe me, he was good. I am living proof of that, and his abilities. So I've even been accused that he could have lied to me and all that, but no, he told me so much inside information. I was like a relief to him. I could keep secrets. He learned that. And of course, I didn't even speak out for 35 years to make sure that all my children were safely out of the house and everything before I spoke out. But I promised him, he said, please just tell my little girls I was a good guy. Imagine.
Yeah.
Most of the time, these handwritten documents is to rewrite. It's part of sanitizing the original document.
So the reason I bring this up, and one of the things I think that's important in introducing you to my audience is to show this is an example of the history, of our intelligence community, and that this is nothing new. That oftentimes an assassination plot that they may have been involved with, or it may have even been, where was the Secret Service in allowing this to happen? I mean, this should not happen. Everybody who has retired from the Secret Service, to people that are part of sniper team task force that have done interviews have all said that there's no way that this should have ever happened. And so when I see these types of things, I'm reminded of something that that I experienced while I was working at the FBI. And when I was at the FBI, I was a cybersecurity engineer, so I didn't really have, I had access to everything, but I wasn't, involved in any investigations. But I'm a human being. I was curious, and they had a central repository where they were dumping basically evidence files for big cases. And one of the biggest cases that came about while I was at the FBI was the Las Vegas shooting.
Yeah.
And so I've never really gotten into this publicly, but I had access to the evidence collection, if you will, for the Las Vegas shooting, and I could review and read the 302s, and I could look at the pictures and look at the videos that they had taken from people's phones and things like that. And one of the things that struck me was in all the evidence that they had, in the 302s that they had, the guy had no motive. The guy had no reason to do this. There was no pre-indicators of any of this. I mean, honestly, it reminded me a lot of the shooter crooks. And would have reminded me, of even looking at the situation with the JFK assassination, where the official, FBI stance and the official report was that this was a lone, gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald.
Same old.
And so I, there's that level of skepticism in me that just doesn't trust the government because of what I've been through as a whistleblower. But in this case of the the case of the Las Vegas shooting, I was able to see all the videos that they were looking at, all of the videos they had taken from people's phones. One of the things that was interesting was that you could see, because of the day and the age that we live in now, people were posting their videos on Twitter. And there were videos that people had that showed specifically flashes of light as if it was coming from a muzzle flash that were several stories down than where the shooter was. And those flashes of light coincided with the rounds that were being fired. And so I immediately, it was discredited by the media. There were people that said, "Oh, these windows don't open. No one could, shoot from down there because there were no windows that could open down there." That was determined to be a lie. There were pictures that somebody had shown that those windows could be opened because that's how they clean them up there. Was that they had to open them up so that they could, basically, clean the outside of those windows. And so, I don't expect that everything that somebody, video that somebody posts is a, oftentimes people might see something and get it wrong, or they may see something and there's a reasonable explanation. But I would have expected to see that video, or at least I think there were two major video clips that were pretty clear that showed this. And I would have expected to see that in the FBI's evidence, yet it was not there. It's like they didn't care about it because it was not part of the narrative that they, intended on pushing. In fact, it would have been very damaging to the narrative of the lone gunman, which we now know, has been a typical.
It's in the playbook. Yeah,
exactly. It's in the playbook for covering up an assassination attempt. So knowing that and having that experience, again, I was very skeptical when I started seeing you have this character who has no known motive, who's able to somehow get past all this security. Supposedly the gun was stashed up there beforehand. He was able to get a drone and survey the area. I mean, come on. You're going to tell me that this kid was able to do all of this, and now they're saying that he's got encrypted, email accounts and bank accounts overseas, and all of this. A 20-year-old kid.
Sounds like Ray. He made it all the way to London. This petty thief.
Exactly. So I found. So I was very skeptical of it, and then yesterday I saw a video clip and I posted it on my. I reposted it on my social media, and I was just. It was very. It blew my mind because of. I had not made the assumption of there being more than one shooter, because it seemed to me that all the shots came from one direction. And looking over there, I didn't see any other place where somebody could, basically fire shots from until two things happened. One of them was Dan Bongino. He got on the air, I think it was yesterday or maybe the day before. And he of course was a former Secret Service. And he shared some inside knowledge that somebody had leaked to him from Secret Service, that where the shooter was, there was supposed to be a sniper team there, but that the sniper team, for some reason, did not set up on the roof. Instead, they set up on the second floor of that same building. So they were on the second floor while the shooter was on the roof. Now, that information, and then all of a sudden I see this video today, and it just totally just blew my mind. So I'm going to bring this up real quick here. It'll take me a second. Okay. So I've got it on the section. It's a long video, and obviously I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'm going to play this piece of it because I want people to see what this guy did. He did an analysis of the audio of the shooting, and he broke it down. And this was taken from a video clip that was right next to where the shooter was. And so it was right next to where the shooter was, and they actually captured some audio over there. And what you hear here is very clearly two different guns. There's no doubt in my mind. Anybody with half a brain, your ears aren't going to be lying. So I want to play this real quickly.
Okay. So now I've just
isolated the sound. 2, 3.
There it is. Okay. Oops, sorry. One last time just to make sure we're hearing this right. There's 0.22 seconds between the crack and the thump, and knowing a little bit about the type of bullet that was used and the caliber of it and the air conditions and things like that, you can estimate the distance of the shooter and how far away the shooter was. So that 0.22 second gap between the crack and the thump is very important because it helps us identify that a gun is being shot from that distance. If there were any other lengths, like if we saw a crack thump, we would clearly see that that was two separate weapons, because assuming the first and the last crack thumps were the same distance apart. So If there's any variation between the crack and the thump, that's when you say, oh, that's a different weapon. So that's one way. The other way is just the tenor, just the sound of the weapon. Does it sound different? Now, this is interesting. This woman here has
Hold on, I'm going to see if I can skip forward here. I want to find that.
To his right chest, 52 grain level, which means that thing must have been on a rising 301 when we look at it here. The first three shots we can make complete sense of.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
All right, listen to this.
A fourth shot that arrives, and it does so with the bullet in a report at 0.212 seconds, close enough for government work here, or rough analysis. Here's another bullet and a report, so that's the snap crack. There's echoes. We see there's echoes, so the bullet makes a and then this sound is echoing probably off of one of the buildings. We have a lot of flat surfaces back there. So the microphone is here, supersonic crack, and the crack makes it to the microphone, and then it echoes off of something. And so we see the crack and an echo. We could probably very, very accurately estimate.
Let's see if I could skip forward a little bit. I want to get to where you hear the
really
difference.
Clarifies everything.
Okay, yeah, here. That's new
case.
audio.
So we'll listen
from video
to
too.
it up through the shots, which is about 20 seconds of tape. Yeah, I won't take you through all the screaming and everything. And by the way, not, there's a lot, however, compared to the OU that the gunman anymore. Okay.
All
so
right.
Listen up. Here we go.
1, 2, 3. Very different.
And then that one more. That's the 6. I'm unclear on. Let's listen to this again. Muffled, and then right. That's what I hear.
All right. So there's no doubt in my mind, and I'm somebody that I shoot all the time. I've got a ton of weapons. Many of them you can see behind me here. I go to the range. I've been in the military. I've fired several weapons, and it's clear as day that these are two different weapons that are being fired. The first 3 shots are clearly not reverberating off of some surface. I'm guessing it was shot from inside the building, maybe where those snipers were located. And those are the first 3 shots that were fired, which the first shot that was fired is the shot that hit Trump in the ear. So that is the shot that was targeting Trump, that gunman. Then you have the barrage of firing that's reverberating very loudly off the tin roof. And, and this kid, remember, he could not get into, he was trying to get on the rifle team and, didn't qualify to get on the rifle team. But, he obviously had an interest in guns. To me, this kid seems like a perfect patsy. And so, obviously, they got him to participate in this. They probably, tricked him into it, gave him false information. He was probably easily manipulated. The kid was a loner. There's a lot of things here about this kid. I've heard stories that he was bullied, in some interviews by other kids at his school, and that, he was just kind of an oddball. And so he was probably easily manipulated. But at the end of the day, he was there to take a bullet to the head so that they could hide who the real gunman was. And the only reason that gunman was unsuccessful was because Trump turned his head, ever so slightly at just the right time. And, because he was trying to see the screen. And so the gunman missed. But that is, I believe that is a fair assessment. And I think anybody, to me, at a minimum, until I see some sort of explanation for hearing clearly 2 separate guns, as far as I know, this kid Crooks only had 1 weapon. He didn't have 2 weapons up there. To me, this seems like a massive cover up, that is happening. So what's your thoughts?
Well, it's the same old pattern, isn't it? We have Sirhan with 8 shots in his, and 13 shots were fired Okay,
Mhm.
we have so-called 3 shots of Lee Harvey Oswald, but we have at least 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bullets. We have a bullet lodged in Connolly's thigh that never was taken out, and he was buried with it. I could go on and on. They cover this up. One of the ways they do is they synchronize the shots. So there's 3 people learn to shoot at exactly the same moment to make it sound like just one shot. It's
And the problem is that today with cell phones and with video, everybody's got a camera, everybody has a audio recording device. It's not so easy to hide that stuff.
Elon Musk allowing no censorship, so we get everything. And it's, in fact, I was censored trying to warn people about COVID and about the things I know
Yep.
about that. And Twitter submerged me, I thought, forever. The minute Trump, that Elon Musk got his account back and he turned it into X, I got my account back. And I'm tell everybody, because I'm forever grateful. I've been able to save lives, and it's important, that we don't have censorship.
So Judith, I've got to cut to a commercial break to give an opportunity for our sponsors, but we will be right back. And it's a short little commercial here, but I want to get into, let's talk a little bit more about your experiences, especially in the aftermath. And, so we'll be right back after a short break.
Military use when they need unlimited power during critical missions. Civilians like you can now get their hands on the exact same technology within 24 hours for pennies on the dollar. Folks, as a former infantry soldier, I can tell you this is the best and cheapest way to get reliable, unlimited energy. And no, I'm not talking about regular generators or the expensive solar panels. You don't have to be an electrician to do it. There's no maintenance needed. It doesn't take up a lot of space. And the best part, you won't need to rely on the power grid anymore. Click below now and hit play.
Not believe, no detergent, no hot water, no fabric softener. Now you even threw away all the chemicals to clean your home. I don't need to buy spray to cut through grease. I don't need to buy window cleaners. I don't need to buy carpet shampoo. I don't need to buy things to mop my floor. I don't need to buy things to take pesticide off my vegetables, fruits, and fish. Oh my gosh, where'd this come from? I'll tell you where it came from. It came from hospitals. This is actually a photo of a huge commercial hospital laundry technology that cost in excess of $100,000 if you bought that whole thing, and it'll fill up your garage. That's how big it is. And what we've done with the advent of microelectronic technology, my team and I constantly use micro technology just like your smartphone. The new EcoWasher SE is a chemical-free laundry and cleaning solution. Imagine, no more detergent, no more chemicals, saves you money, pays for itself, gives you a healthier life, and simplifies doing laundry. And now we're going to include 2 free Thunder Pure Safe Air Minis that purifies your home and sanitizes your surfaces like a thunderstorm in nature. Eliminates all odors. Plus, you're receiving $100 off by using code podcast on the new EcoWasher SE. Let me remind you, 2 free Thunder Pure Safe Air Minis plus $100 off during this podcast. Podcast is your coupon code at Eco.
Next up, we have Julius here, and he's from his company,
All right, and we're back. This is the Raising Cain Show, and I'm with my guest here, Judyth Vary Baker. Judith, I want to hear more about your personal story in this, and what you have experienced. You said that you waited for for several decades before you decided to come out and start speaking about this. But right after all of this, when Oswald was shot, when he was accused of being the gunman, what happened right after that? What happened to you? Where were you in all of this? Were you investigated? Were you interviewed? I imagine you had to have been absolutely terrified.
I was. I my life was saved. Almost everybody in the project I was telling you about was murdered. They wanted to cover all the tracks up and everything. I had objected to using prisoners who weren't aware that when they volunteered for the weaponized cancer material that we had created with the SV40 monkey virus, by the way, which is still being used today. Look it up with COVID vaccines, all right? Absolutely. That I was just terrified, and I was sent back to Florida, but Lee and I had fallen in love, and we planned to go to Mexico and everything. And I've got a lot of documents. I have my witnesses and so on. So now they realize they can't just get rid of me because people are going to say she was in cancer research. She's been in all the papers. How come all of a sudden no cancer? What happened in New Orleans? So they put me in a posh, very advanced lab that had contracts with NASA and everything. All right. So I was there, but some of those people were in the know, and they knew that they sort of, had to make sure that after this I would be terminated, quietly and all that. And I was given a lot of warnings that if I ever spoke out. All right, now I'd like to back up a little because I spoke to Lee only 37 and a half hours before the assassination.
Okay.
That's really close. Because of David Ferry. Now, I've written a book all about David Ferry. In the film JFK, you'll see a lot about Dave, and a lot of that's accurate, except his voice was lower and he was taller than Joe Pesci, and all that, and far more formidable than they made him out now to be a fool and so on. Of course, they denigrate, they do everything to belittle the stature of these people that really deserve a great deal more in history. So see my book, David Ferry. But anyway, Dave warned me that if I had to become a vanilla girl, if I tried to do anything more in science, they would eliminate me, period. Now, it's interesting that the mafia was not so interested in taking Lee out, as you might expect, as was the CIA and the FBI. But they were all working together at the time. And Lee had relatives that were mob. He was a great liaison, really, between the mob and, for example, FBI and CIA, because of his relationship with his uncle, who was close to the Godfather, Carlos Marcello, and I could go into that. But the bottom line is that I had to be quiet, say nothing, do nothing, and be what they call a vanilla girl the rest of my life. When Lee called me, it was very harrowing because he knew that if he had already said, I believe I saved Kennedy's life 3 weeks ago. How simple that sounds. When I said that in 1999, when I first spoke out, early 1999, I was practically, people are saying things like, oh, come on, we can understand that Lee Oswald was a patsy, but he was a nobody. What do you mean that, he would have any kind of impact, or what was anybody special? And what do you mean that he saved Kennedy's life 3 weeks ago, or they thought he did? Well, now we have Abraham Bolden. I sent you a photo showing Abraham and me together, Secret Service agent. And this man was actually on the Kennedy detail, protecting Kennedy, was kicked out basically due to racial discrimination, and was sent to Chicago. And in Chicago, he was there. Well, I think they had a speakerphone type situation when the Secret Service was getting ready there to protect Kennedy, who was coming to Chicago, going to be at a baseball game and all that. And the FBI called him and said, step down, stand down. He's not coming. Well, why? Well, because we've arrested armed men, with guns and all that. We've looked into this, and Mr. Valley was involved and so on. And we averted an assassination attempt. And the one who informed us on how to find out about all this, his name was Lee. Now that gives me chills because that was him. That was Lee. And he risked his life. He has to pretend on the outside that he didn't care. But you know what? The government didn't know that he was a true patriot, and all his life his country was his father. His father died before he was born. Came from a military family. So Lee is telling me, I believe I saved Kennedy's life. He says, now I'm under great suspicion and I don't think I'm going to survive. He said, I've joined an abort team. When I told Jim, there he is. That's Abraham Bolden and me. We're showing our books, me and Lee, and he's got his Echo Dealing Plaza. There we are together. Okay. When I told, when Lee told me that he didn't think he was going to survive, but he also said that he had joined an abort team. Now, it turned out later, we know from Tosh Plumley and others, that the abort team seems to have been infiltrated, and they actually brought in more shooters and everything, backups in what was supposed to be the abort team. An abort team would go, and they can't go and show who they are especially, but they get in the line of fire. They do things like that to disrupt. They might even set off a firecracker or something, to alert, what they might do. Lee was involved in that. When I was sitting with Lee, with Jim Mars, very famous man. He used to wear his hat, had a beard, famous fellow, one of our best researchers. And by the way, the first to endorse me after he saw all my evidence. We're sitting there in a restaurant and I'm showing him all this stuff and yeah. And when I said abort team, what? He went like that. He got out of his seat right there in front of the audience and everything, I mean, I've talked to all the restaurateurs there, and the customers. What do you mean, you abort team? He said, nobody knows about the abort team, only me, he said, and Tosh Plumley. At that time, only those two individuals knew about the abort team and all that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that started it. And any rate, Lee told me he was part of an abort team, and I believe this team made him stay in one spot so that he could surely be apprehended. Lee, right. What does he do? He walks right out the front door of the Texas School Book Depository. By the way, there are police clustered around all the back exits. He goes out the front door. They don't dare shoot him or anything. But of course, they framed him and everything. But Lee told me he thought he was going to be killed. And they put a rifle in his hand. When I knew what might happen, I said, can't you call in sick or something, And he said, please run, save yourself. And he said, if I do that, he said, they would come after you. They come after my babies and my wife, and then they get me anyway. He said, and if I stay, because I'm pretending to be a shooter, if I stay, that will be one less bullet aimed at Kennedy. Imagine, I'm hearing these words, and now I'm sitting there and I know what's going to happen. What's going to happen? Is there a way that the abort team can work and save him? And then it comes across that Kennedy's been shot. And I'm so, oh God, please, at least, is Lee okay? And then I find out they have captured him. And right away, the same day that he was captured, this is November 22nd, Friday, okay? By the way, this year has exactly the same days. For example, this Friday, November 22nd, it'll be the same date and everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the whole year.
That's interesting.
It is interesting. I want to see parallels because these people they're sick. They will do things on these various anniversaries. I'm sure of it. All right. Yeah. So we need to look at that because they're ritual minded. Anyway, so I'm waiting to see, and sure enough, first I cried when Kennedy was shot. Now my boss and everybody, because they all were gathered around a TV set that was hanging on the wall there in the lab, and now I'm crying because I couldn't help myself when they captured Lee. And my boss said, "What's the matter with you? You cried when Kennedy shot, and now when they got the killer, and you're crying," because right away they called him the killer. The suspect, they didn't say that. We had the assassin. Oh, and by 6 o'clock that evening, head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, good friends with Lyndon Johnson. They lived across the street from each other for like 20 years. Okay, so he says, he sends out to the SAC of Dallas, and they're concerned. They say, look, we've got posters saying, wanted for treason. We got all these people that didn't like it. We need to look them up. And he said, oh, no, you don't. I have the document that shows that same night, November 22nd, Friday, that same night, he says Lee Oswald was the only one involved. Does that sound familiar with what we're looking at? So,
that sounds awful.
And of course, in 47 hours after he's captured, they shoot him. So he cannot speak. It's the same thing.
Yep.
We have Mr. Han, we know he did not shoot Kennedy. I'm talking about Robert F. Kennedy. All right. We know it's impossible because the shot that killed him, with the coroner say, came from behind, and you've got the ring there of nitrates from the gunpowder and so on. There it is, right on the back of his head. And they won't let him out.
It's interesting. Martin Luther King, his family, they do not believe, that the assailant claimed to be the assassin, was actually the assassin as well. So,
and you find the gun is lying there and openly, everybody who's assassins are going to put their gun with their fingerprints all over it and so on.
Right.
Yeah, identify right where it can be picked up. And what is this about the gun that this man fires to kill the president from his own workplace where everybody can recognize him?
Right.
And by the way, he has to put the gun together with a dime because it was broken down according to them. Have you ever tried to do that, sir? You said you know guns, right?
Yep.
Can you put together a carcana with a dime?
No.
I don't think
no.
so. Yeah.
It would be very difficult.
Yeah. Well, you only have 5 minutes to reassemble it and so on. Anyway, it's cover up. And I'm brokenhearted. And I could do nothing. I screamed. I threw up. I don't remember anything, I don't know how I functioned, but 2 days, I remember nothing. Absolutely nothing.
So while we've been talking here and learning a lot more about your background, I want to bring up a picture real quick of you when you were 17 years old here. Hold on a second.
Okay.
So I believe that's you working in your lab, right? I can see
Yes,
the mouse up there.
there are 6 test tubes there filled with different kinds like nicotine sulfate and all the things that will make an aerosol. With the aerosol, they poor germ-free mice have nothing else to breathe, and they do get lung cancer. It is carcinogenic. And you can imagine these 3 doctors were thrilled to show that. And only a couple of years later, the Surgeon General comes out and says that smoking causes lung cancer.
So something that your background in this, I wasn't planning on talking about this tonight, but I've got to ask because speaking of government conspiracies, and I wouldn't even call them theories at this point, they're actual conspiracies. I had a request I have a cybersecurity contracting company, and oftentimes when there is a project that is involving something and it has a piece of it that is cyber related, maybe a company doesn't know how to do that, they'll reach out to me and they'll say, hey, will you write the cyber portion of this, and if we win this,
and I like cyber stuff too. I've written a book called Letters to the Cyborgs. I'm into AI, so I can appreciate what you're saying right now.
Yep. So I got a request for proposal. This was several months ago, and they wanted me to write the cyber piece to it. And I started reading through this thing, and I was shocked because it became blatantly obvious to me that what they were doing was at best unethical, but possibly illegal, unconstitutional. You had it was the Non-Proliferation Fund was behind it. They were the funder for it. And they stated very clearly that they had 0-day appropriations, meaning they didn't have to go get permission from Congress. They could just spend money however they want. They also had a comment in there that they were able to do things outside of the U.S. Constitution. And what this contract was for, and this is why I'm bringing this up, you'll understand very quickly here. This was a contract for U.S. government contractors in conjunction with the Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Fund. They were funding the development of biolabs down in Chile. And
Oh,
in
no.
specifically what they were doing was, and these were biolabs that dealt with highly contagious, I can't remember the exact terminology they used, but it was like HG something, or but it had to do with like highly contagious diseases or viruses and biologicals.
They're
But
everywhere. There are hundreds of them, you realize, throughout the world.
yep. Well, they were, this contract was specifically to network all of these labs together that
Oh,
are specifically
God.
in Chile. And then here were the two other things that they wanted done. Was they wanted a rapid, they wanted a plan for basically a rapid destruction and sanitization plan, and the capability to basically shut down this lab and sanitize it and destroy it, quickly.
Get rid of the evidence. Okay.
Right. And this was actually in the RFP. And this came about maybe about a year, 6 months to a year after it came out that when Russia invaded the Ukraine, one of the things they went and did was they went to all the biolabs to
They
shut them down.
demolished those labs. And
Yep.
really, these were aimed at the USSR. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they had every right. Some of them, of course, were posing as veterinary clinics, and others were, doing research on grain production and so on.
Well, and I think that probably they're violating, probably laws that we have on the books that say you can't mess with certain, development of biological weapons and things like that. They're doing it in other countries because they can't do it here in the U.S. And
They have done it, but it's
Right.
difficult, and it can be discovered too easily now.
Right. One of the things that was disturbing was they said that they wanted this in Chile to be a model for the same thing they wanted to be a model so they could reproduce it with all of our other partners around the world.
Good
So that
Lord,
means
Nate.
that more than Chile,
Do you have any copies of this, or
I do.
were you able?
I do, and I'll send you I'll email you a
All
copy
right,
of it.
do that, but also for your own protection, of course, you need to make sure that this can be disseminated immediately if anything happens to you.
This was a public RFP, which is crazy. Like, it's amazing. Like,
Well,
there's things.
it's plain view, sir. Therefore, it can't be important, right? It's not important if somebody looks at it because of the
Yep.
plethora of information out there.
That's right. There's so much information.
As alert as you are to understand.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was just really shocked about that. But it sounds to me, very similar to kind of some of the stuff that they were having you do, back then. They were having you working on special projects and stuff like that.
You were the first to do gain of function. I don't mean to keep interrupting you. I apologize.
No,
It's
go
just
for it.
exciting to see what's happened to you is same old stuff. It's very tiresome to see that they don't even come up with new ideas, and they don't even care anymore if you see it, because there's so much evil out there right now. And our people don't have very much in the way of understanding or knowledge. Our people are dying for lack of knowledge, as it says in the Bible.
Yep. Well, and clearly they are having they own the media, so they're able to control the media and basically get the media to push the narrative that they want. And I think that's part of the problem. But thankfully, we have places like X and and other places where we're not being censored, and we can put this stuff out there and we can talk about it, and there's really not anything they can do to stop us. We're coming up on the hour here, and I always like to give the final word to my guests, and I want to have you back on to talk about some of this other stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I would really like to with you.
Yeah.
But I do like to try to keep it to an hour. And so I want to give you the opportunity. If there's one thing, right now we've got about 1,400 live viewers right now that are watching the show.
God bless you all.
And if there was,
all I can say is we wouldn't be here without the grace of God. I've had things happen like cut brake line, and I've been hit by 3 cars. I had to get my left eye saved. In fact, while I was raising funds for that, they stopped and said I was just a fake and all that, and I was just a grifter. But just enough got raised that I was able overseas to save my left eye from what had happened to me.
Yeah. Well, what is it that you want our guests to take away from this conversation? If there's anything that you want them to remember or take away from it, what would it be?
That only good people are going to save our country. I want people to understand we must stop voting machines. We must have only photo ID from citizens voting, no early voting, no late voting, and or don't think just because you go to the polls, and of course that's important, but I predict even if 90% of the votes went to Trump, that he will not win if we have voting machines. And the other thing I want to say is about bird flu. All right. Right now, they're killing like millions of chickens. We don't even know if they're bringing in the disease and then saying, look at here, you've got it. Something's going on to mess up our food supplies. It's very important that instead of killing all of a herd or all of the chickens and so on, what they're doing now, that's not how you exterminate this. You have to sequester the herd or the cluster of chickens, see which ones survive, see which ones live the longest. That's how you conquer it. Kill them all, and you have control of our food supply just by infecting them.
Yeah, I'm very concerned, in fact, on that. I had our agriculture commissioner on last Tuesday, and I was specifically grilling him on there was reports that had come out through an article in the AP that Moderna and Pfizer are in the process of doing studies with mRNA vaccines for cattle and poultry.
Oh, absolutely. And they're forcing the vaccines on some of the cattle. Yep. And the PCR tests are worthless. Yep. They were only meant to detect viruses, of which there are plenty around. And no, they're all bird flu. Bird flu has been with us for centuries, no problem. But they have enhanced it with gain of function. They did this deliberately. They made it so it can hurt us. We have got to stop this unethical culling of the human race. Oh, there are too many of us. I'll tell you who are too many of them. These people who want to kill humanity, kill animals, by the way, CO2 is not that dangerous. I'm going to say one more thing here. CO2 is not that dangerous. You know, Musk rockets take up methane, which is a deadly greenhouse gas, turn it into CO2 and water. He's really soaking up this methane. It's those kind of greenhouse gases. We are at a almost historic low in CO2, and they want to stop the CO2 footprint. If it goes much lower, our animals and plants at the higher altitudes will not get enough CO2. We'll have die-off of plants and forests like you will not believe. We need more CO2, not less, and we need to get rid of the toxic gases. They don't want to scrub those out because those are expensive, so it's easy to grab CO2. It's not CO2 that's the problem. Don't let them fool you. We need to plant more trees, not cut them down.
Absolutely. Well, Judith, thank you so much for joining us. And, it's been a wealth of knowledge. It's been very interesting to hear your story, from your youth and what you went through with this. And I think we're seeing a lot of parallels. I always like to end in prayer. I think that no matter what, we can't, if we expect to be able to make any change in this world and do anything and have any success without God, we're fooling ourselves. Even our founders understood the need for providence. And so I always like to end in prayer. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and just say a quick prayer, and then that will be the end of the show. But I would love to have you back on again. So stick around, and after the show ends, we'll talk about setting up something for the future to talk about some of these other issues. Heavenly Father, I just thank you, God, so much for just the opportunity, Lord, to meet Judith, Lord, and be able to go through and talk about these issues, Lord. We see a lot of corruption in our nation, Lord. We see a lot of corruption within our intelligence agencies. We know, Lord, there are good people that are in there. We know there are good people in the FBI, but the leadership, Lord, is corrupt. And God, we pray and ask that you would expose the truth, that you would remove the corrupt from power, and that you would bring about the godly and the righteous to lead our nation, Lord, in all aspects of these agencies. Lord, we pray that you would give divine guidance, to our leaders, Lord, and that you would, if they're evil, I pray you'd remove them. And Lord, we also ask that you would just bless our endeavors and our attempts to shed light to these issues, and that you would help us to continue to be able to fight the good fight and do this great work. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, the time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.